Good morning, everybody, or good afternoon, wherever you are located, and welcome to our webinar on the new EU battery law, which is supercharged with obligations. We are very happy to discuss and talk with you the next 50 minutes or so about ensuring product compliance under the new European battery law, especially as regards the manufacturers and importers perspective. With me today is my colleague and head of our practice area, commercial and distribution, Benedikt Rohrßen.
Thank you, Uli. And exactly, our practice area, which is called commercial agreements and distribution. What are we doing? Well, we are advising companies alongside the supply chain entering the European market. And not only that in general, but we focus on helping them distributing their products, and that in a way which is ensured that their products comply with the regulatory requirements. And in that respect, there is with me Ulrich Spiegel. As you can see below, he is an attorney at law, and not only that, but he is also a certified CE officer, so for product compliance certified officer, who focuses especially on product compliance aspects within the supply chain. Ulrich, please go ahead.
Exactly. Thank you. For starters, some organizational things. We will distribute the slides we show you today afterwards, so no need to write too many things down. If you have any questions, please feel free to write the questions at any time in the question section, which should be on the right of your screen. All right, we will jump into the agenda. What are we going to do with you today? First of all, we'll have a look at the European batteries market and especially talk about how to get access to the European market and what is the background of the new European battery law. Then we will depart for an overview of the European batteries regulation. We will especially discuss some key data. Furthermore, look at the regulation from an economic operator's view, and we will discuss the battery categories. After that, we will have some specific talk about specific tasks arising from the new EU battery regulation. And afterwards, we will be happy to answer at least some of the questions you might raise during the webinar. All right, let's jump right in and look at the European batteries market. Well, what we can see here, and to start, as anyone should start its webinar, let's talk about the importance of the European battery market. What we can see is that the European battery market is estimated to grow a lot. Not only the Technical University of Aachen says that, but also the European Battery Alliance estimates that we will have an annual market volume of 250 billion euros by 2025. Billion, this means for the German-speaking people here, Milliarden, so this is 250 billion euros by 2025. This is a real big number. And I think we do not really have to be surprised that it goes in this direction, as we are all starting to borrow e-scooters, if we maybe have bought an e-bike, or as we are planning or already have done to have some solar panels on our rooftops. These are all products which are more or less dependent on batteries, and we are definitely walking towards even bigger importance of batteries within the European market. The European Commission is of the same opinion, not only that we have a big market and that it is important. The European Commission goes even beyond that and says it's a strategic imperative for Europe in context with the clean energy transition to have development and production of the batteries stipulated and regulated within the European Union in a uniform way. This uniform stipulation of the European batteries market will be found in future in the European batteries regulation, which will replace the already known to you EU batteries directive time after time. Let's have a really rough overview on the EU batteries regulation. What is the approach and what is the aim? We see a life cycle approach within the European Green Deal, which says we do not want to have any net emissions of carbon dioxide gases and so on until 2050. And the EU batteries regulation for the first time sees a holistic approach, or makes a holistic approach towards batteries, as it governs from design to waste, everything as regards batteries. So the battery regulation will give you specific design requirements, production requirements, usage requirements, and also, of course, recycling and waste. The EU battery regulation comes from the new legislative framework perspective, or talks from a new legislative framework perspective, meaning that from a certain template law, we use several clauses which we already know to not only go into the product safety direction, and this is a new thing, but also to go into the sustainability direction. What does this mean? So we see that the battery law until today is rather in coming from environmental perspective and from waste perspective. What we will have in future is also the safety requirements, at least for certain battery categories. We will talk about this at the later stage within the EU battery regulation. Furthermore, and as we know it from other new legislative framework regulations, we see that the labeling requirements on batteries will become stricter. What is completely new to products within the European Union is that we will have a requirement as regards QR codes, which have to be marked on the battery itself. On the other hand, of course, the EU battery regulation is clearly an environmental law regulation, meaning that we have, well, what we try is to prohibit built-in batteries, meaning that devices with batteries which are built in have to be somehow the battery interchangeable, that we can remove it and replace it. What of course shall be further be strengthened is the recycling process of batteries. And what I've already told you is that we will see a replacement of the EU batteries directive. Let's get on an even higher flight level at this point. Why is this even important for you? Basically, what we are talking today is the absolute minimum standard you have to fulfill to be able to market your products in the European Union and to keep them on the market. So we are talking today about public law product requirements. You might be already aware, especially if you produce, let's say, larger batteries, of the low voltage directive and of the radio equipment directive. These directives stipulate the absolute minimum you have to fulfill to be even allowed to market your products. The EU batteries regulation is one of these public law product requirements. However, it does not stop there. It is for you, for your company, but also for you as person, very important to fulfill these minimum standards as regards avoiding civil law and criminal law liability. Civil law liability, we are talking about product and producer liability, meaning that any defect in the battery might most likely result from a battery not fulfilling the public law product requirements. Product liability in Europe means also that we have strict liability without any need for responsibility. So if you fail to fulfill a minimum standard given by the EU batteries regulation, it's most likely that you will be liable from product liability perspective for this battery. Besides that, if the battery is defective and somebody gets hurt by the battery, or most likely it's hopefully only hurt, not that the person is killed by the battery, and you will be also held responsible from a criminal law perspective. Let's shift the view on this topic and go also to why is it important for you to have a sustainable business in place. So on the one hand, I've already told you, to gain and maintain market access, you will need to fulfill all public law requirements as arising from the batteries regulation. Not only if you are directly addressed from the batteries regulation as manufacturer, importer, or distributor, but also if you, for example, only operate a battery, even without building it by yourself, but simply by buying it from somebody else. Why is that so? If the a competent market surveillance authority recognizes that your battery might not be in line with the requirements, it can say you are not longer allowed to operate your battery, at least if there is a certain risk going with the non-compliance. So you as a so-called non-interferer will be addressed by market surveillance authorities. This is something you should ideally prevent from coming into existence. On the other hand, we have again the product liability focus here, because I'm totally convinced that no company really markets product is not really convinced of as regards quality, as regards safety. Maybe we are even convinced in such a way that we put our trademark on the product, then we are quasi-manufacturer and will be liable under the product compliance product liability scheme in Europe. Besides that, if you're an importer to the European Union, you will be also held liable under the product liability scheme of Europe. Why is that important? This is not only important to be able to maintain the operation of your product, but also if you're buying them or selling them, to determine what is your product worth. Are there any risks I have to somehow consider when buying the product? If we have the pleasure to assist you in buying or selling products, we would always have a look at the product compliance perspective to assess whether we need certain guarantees, maybe in an agreement, or if we have to at least lower the purchase price of the product because it is likely, or there comes some risk with the products that they might not be sustainable, operatable. Okay. Enough of the general talk. Let's depart for our overview on the European batteries regulation. I will start with some key data. What you can see here is again the aspects of the European Commission. What the European Commission wanted was establishing a harmonized framework for the entire life cycle of batteries. I've already talked a little bit about that, but also promote a circular economy as regards recycling. By this, and this is I think quite interesting, the European Union also wants to ensure strategic independence. In a world where we are talking about decoupling and in a world where we see conflicts rising, the European Union somehow dreams about an European battery market which is self-sustained without the need to import too many critical raw materials or too many batteries from outside of the European Union. Whether this is a realistic scenario or not, can we leave open to discussion. However, this is surely one of the aspects standing behind the European batteries regulation. These aspects lead to the Commission proposal of 10 December 2020, which now have formed the new and quite comprehensive European batteries regulation of 12 July 2023. No one says it better than the EU batteries regulation itself, and it says it's novel and complex. Just for an example, you can see we are going from 30 recitals and 30 articles to 143 recitals and 96 articles within the new EU battery law. What I just told you about the product, the public law requirements you need to fulfill to even become market access is also true under the EU batteries regulation. What you can see here is something we can abbreviate as prohibition subject to authorization. You are not allowed to market any battery within the European market unless the battery fulfills all requirements which are laid on it by product law, especially by the EU batteries regulation. So now you know how important the topic is for you to ensure the sustainable operation of your batteries, but also to be able to even market them. When you have already learned that the EU batteries regulation is incredibly comprehensive, how are we able to manage and somehow mitigate this topic? What we think is, what might help you is to ask you 3 questions. Who has to do what and when has one to do it? So first you can consider what is my role as regards batteries, and we are going beyond only the roles stipulated within the batteries regulation. Also maybe you will have to deal with the batteries from another perspective, for example, as a project developer who might build large battery plants, such as stationary battery energy storage systems, but also what are the requirements arising on the one side from your role, which comes with certain obligations, but also what are the requirements on certain battery categories. On both topics, I'm happy to talk later to you about this. What we will have a look at now is when do you have to fulfill certain requirements. So what is the timing which comes along with the EU batteries regulation? So the EU batteries regulation already entered into force on 7th August 2023. and it will apply from 18th February 2021. So if we have a look in our calendar, there's Christmas and then there's the battery regulation. But please stay with us, do not run in panic. What we see is that we will have a certain phasing of the EU batteries regulation, so it will not be all applicable from 18th February 2024, but it will be applicable in a phased way as regards certain obligations becoming applicable from certain dates, but also as certain obligations and requirements becoming stricter over the time of the EU battery regulation. What is interesting is that the EU regulation as a regulation directly applies within every member state of the European Union, so there is no need for any implementation. As example, in Germany, right now we all know the Batteriegesetz, the German Batteries Act. This will be more or less left empty. What we will see in these national implementations is some definition of competent authorities. As we are a federal state here in Germany, we will have the competent market authorities in every federal state, but also, and this is even ordered by the EU batteries regulation, that we'll have sanctions within the to be amended German Batteries Act. As I just told you, do not panic. We will have a phasing start of applications and continuous adjustment of the EU batteries regulation. I have summarized you on the next 2 slides what will be applicable when. I will just jump over these slides. As I just said, you will receive the slides afterwards. So next one, we've heard about the when. Now I'm really happy to pass over to Benedikt, who will tell you about the who.
Exactly, thank you. So now to the who. Who are the players under this new EU batteries regulation? And in terms of this regulation, there are several different operators which we can divide basically into 2 different groups, legally speaking. So on the left-hand side, you see here the economic operators, which are 5 of them generally, let's say, most important, the manufacturer, of course. And you have the importer, the distributor, and the fulfillment service provider. These are the most important ones, and we will dive deeper into them on the next slides. And on the other side, there's operators sui generis, so it's on kind of their own. They are not listed as economic operators, but they have duties under this batteries regulation. And the most important ones are here the producer, who has to take care also of the waste management. And then it divides up in 2 ways. Either you have the recyclers or you have the waste management operators who treat or take care of treating the waste of the batteries. And just to just give you one example, that these roles actually may be held within the European Union by different persons. One role may be held by different persons. Let's say, talk about the producer, for example, which, as you can see here, refers to an economic operator which operates at the level of one member state, and within that member state supplies a battery for the first time on that market, on that member state market. If you just imagine, for example, having a manufacturer outside Europe, let's say in Asia and America, and that manufacturer supplies the batteries to an importer based, for example, in Hamburg, Germany, and that importer then takes care of selling these batteries again to distributors in Germany and to distributors in France, for example, or Italy. In that case, the importer has the double role as being, first of all, an importer, but also being a producer, as far as the batteries he resells within Germany are concerned, while the role of the producer in France or in Italy is held by the respective distributors if they sell the batteries on their local markets. So this was just in order to show you that there is not only one single producer within the European Union who has to take care of all the waste management. That's the most important role the producer has, but there may be and there will be, if you sell not only in one member state, different kinds of producers throughout the European Union. Let's, however, dive a bit more into detail of what we want to talk about today. And we want to talk about the supply chain and about especially the roles of manufacturers, importers, distributors when you come from abroad, from outside the European Union. And this is not the best circle that we have made, but it shall show you that the idea behind this whole regulation is, of course, to have a circular economy. So ideally to have the manufacturer in the starting point and then throughout the European Union, selling the products and ideally having them returned into the life cycle, giving them a second life through the recyclers or through waste management operators who then take away the parts which can still be used, the materials, the raw materials, and hand them back, for example, to the manufacturer for giving them a second life. But let's dive more a bit into the specific roles of single persons. As Ulrich said, we are now talking about the who. Who is concerned by this batteries regulation? And the starting point of it all is the manufacturer, of course. So what is a manufacturer? That's quite in the same way as in many other regulations, similarly defined. It's the one who manufactures or has manufactured and develops the battery and markets it under its own name or trademark. So it's not the sub-supplier, it's not the one who is just the workbench for another one, but it's the manufacturer who puts it, who sells it with its own name and brings it into the European Union or puts it into operation here. And now the question is, generally speaking, because Ulrich will tell you later on about the different batteries categories and the different obligations which are concerned with it. So this is generally speaking, what is the role of a manufacturer? And the role of a manufacturer is that he has or she has, the manufacturer has to ensure, that's the most important, basically that the battery is compliant with the regulation. So meaning especially with its material composition, with the safety, that it doesn't explode, that it performs well, that it maintains the performance which is promised, and that it's durable also. And moreover, there is also the formal requirements that the necessary documents need to be drafted, so the technical documentation must be there. That's something which the manufacturer cannot delegate to the authorized representative, which the manufacturer will have usually, especially if the manufacturer is based outside the European Union. So technical documentation, declaration of conformity and instructions, safety information, all these documents need to be drafted by the manufacturer and kept on file for usually 10 years. So, and then there's the proper labeling process, the battery management system must be granted access to, and that's things which Ulrich will tell you later about when we come to the single obligations, especially the battery management system is something which I find personally super interesting. And when we have talked about the manufacturer, the next one would be the importer. So the importer, that's, as Ulrich already referred to, the new legislative framework, that's also something which the importer has the usual obligations which are known from the NLF. Perhaps first starting from the definition, what is the importer? Well, different from the manufacturer, the importer is the one which is established in the EU. So the manufacturer may be outside, as I said in the example beforehand, maybe based in Asia, in America, in Africa, wherever, Australia. But the importer is the one who is established in the EU and places the batteries from third countries outside on the European market. And what is interesting now here to see is that while we said before, and we saw it before, the manufacturer has to ensure that the battery is compliant. The importer is kind of a controller, and he has to verify that, especially the documents are there, that the batteries are correctly labeled. So he has to kind of do an outside control of the products of the batteries in order to be allowed to import them and sell them on the European market. He also has to ensure storage and transport conditions, of course, as the importer is the one who brings them on the market. He has to make sure that it's only compliant batteries which land up here. He or she is the first person on the market where the batteries arrive. So it's his or her job to take care of that the transport conditions are also compliant and that the batteries do not deteriorate during the transport. And in the end, interestingly, there is also the duty to set up a complaint register if there's customers who have complaints. And that complaint register is also open for authorities who may have to look it up, who want to look it up, and especially has to, in cases of complaints, will have to cooperate with the market surveillance authorities, which will be, as Ulrich already said before, which will be laid down in the respective national laws, which will still come. Then turning to the authorized representative, as I said before, there is the manufacturer, and the manufacturer, if based outside the European Union, as may often be the case, he or she will have then an authorized representative who can then, and is based in the European Union, which with a written mandate, that's important, a written mandate from the manufacturer is allowed to act on behalf of the manufacturer for specific tasks. So as I said already beforehand, these specific tasks do not include the material compliance of the product, like the drafting of the technical documentation, but you can give them the delegate them the right to provide administrative support. You can delegate them and use them as, let's say, the first point of contact for authorities. So if there's anything wrong with a product, or if there's the suspicion that something might be wrong, the authorities will go usually to the authorized representative in order to take up the case. So what is the minimum? As I said, the written mandate is needed. What is the minimum scope of that mandate? Well, you see it here. It is what is known also from the new legislative framework. So not really big news on this side. Also, the written mandate must be, well, it must be written. That's the most important thing. Must be in the language of the European Union. We usually do that in English for best practice. Then it must be kept, as I said beforehand, also at the disposal of the national authorities for 10 years, and it must provide the they must allow the authorized representative to have information at hand and the documentation necessary to demonstrate conformity of the battery at any time when the authorities approach the authorized representative. And in case there is the suspicion that it does not, then again the authorized representative also has to cooperate with the authorities. Further down the supply chain, it must not be, but there may be, there need not be, there may be the distributor. So the distributor is the one who makes the battery available on the market, except if there is an importer already who does that. And distributor, as known also from the new legislative framework, is the one who also again has to check whether the documents are drafted properly, whether there's this QR code which must be now on the batteries, whether they are marked properly with the CE sign, with the separate collection, and all these formal issues. And also he has to check whether the manufacturer is registered in the manufacturer's register. So it's kind of, again, a controlling role of the distributor who has to take care of these issues. And if not, if there is an issue, again, also the distributor has to cooperate with the authorities. And that's a special obligation of the distributor, which may also lie on the producer, is to take back the waste batteries. Last but not least, there is still the fulfillment service provider. So that is any person, legal or natural, who offers two of the following services: either storing the batteries, packaging them, or addressing or dispatching the batteries to customers. So this was about the who. We heard about the when before and from Ulrich. We heard about the who. Now this is just a brief overview for you, as Ulrich said before, and there's some slides just as a takeaway, and this is one of the takeaway slides already, so that you have a good overview as economic operator from your perspective. What are the most important parts? It is a rougher overview than which you can take from the regulations register of content. So it's easier to find the different requirements, the different parts of the content within the European batteries regulation. And we will now turn on to Ulrich, who will talk a bit more about the what, the obligation, distinguishing the different batteries categories.
Exactly. Thank you very much, Benedikt. As Benedikt already hinted, he will talk about the requirements arising from the EU batteries regulation on the batteries. As an overview, not every requirement is applicable to every battery category, but I want to give you an overview first and then dive into the battery categories. So first of all, we can somehow differentiate between the obligations, the requirements arising from the EU batteries law by differentiating between the labeling and information requirements, the rather formal aspects, and the sustainability and safety requirements, the rather material aspect. As regards labeling and information, we see it is a new legislative framework regulation. So we especially considering the newest developments within the new legislative framework. So we see that we will have to identify a manufacturer, the battery category. We will have to, and this is really new, we will have to print a QR code on it. So, but it is not all new. You will know many of the tasks already from the past as regards batteries, but some tasks are new. What is especially new is the battery passport. I will talk on these electronic file of a battery later on a little bit when we are talking about the battery categories. And what is also new is the information system regarding health and expected lifetime of batteries, the so-called battery management system. Besides the formal aspects, we have the material sustainability and safety aspects, which is quite interesting. You also knew some of them, some are new. The restriction of substances within batteries, you're already known to them. I think the thresholds getting stricter. What is new is the CO2 footprint requirement, which will allow only certain batteries with a certain CO2 footprint. I will talk on this later a little bit more. And we will have a minimum recycled content in the batteries. You will have certain performance and durability requirements. And I can see that we have already received some questions, and this will address the question as it is about what do I have to do if I implement batteries into my devices I would like to market. And this is an obligation addressed by removability and replaceability obligations arising from the EU batteries regulation, which will also be valid for certain products. I will talk on this at a later stage in more detail when we're addressing the certain battery categories. The battery categories. So I will stay on this slide a little bit longer. As we've already mentioned, you will receive the slides afterwards, but I would like to ensure that you're able to be able to better follow my words. The slides I will jump over once I've told you about the battery categories are quite texty, I would say. So maybe not ideal for you to show now, but please feel free when you receive the slides to raise any questions you might have. So battery categories. Basically, we see 5 battery categories. Portable batteries, light mean of transport batteries, starter, lightning and ignition batteries, industrial batteries, and electric vehicle batteries. 2 of these battery categories do even have subcategories. I will talk on the subcategories once we reach the respective battery category. What I will do now is that I will try to summarize in a hopefully short and efficient way the requirements which will be laid on the different battery products, battery categories. So let's start with the portable battery. The portable battery are batteries you all know from your smartphone, from your laptop. Most likely these batteries will be subject to the battery category portable battery. And we have here already the first subcategory of battery. It's the so-called portable battery of general use. This is the battery everybody knows from the supermarket. This is the like AA, AAA battery, which you will need for your remote control of your television, for example. As regards to portable batteries of general use, the European Commission is required to adopt a delegated act until August 2028, which establishes requirements for the electrical performance and durability. And furthermore, the European Commission will review until December 2030 whether non-rechargeable batteries, portable batteries of general use, shall be prohibited at all, totally. So we might see a prohibition of such batteries in the future. Portable batteries in general will not of general use, but all portable batteries will see remove and replaceability obligations and requirements. And this is especially interesting since persons who place products with portable batteries on the market have to design the products in such a way that end users can easily replace such batteries, not only during the lifetime or during the time you market such product, but also 5 years after the end of production. So what this means is that you will have to form a certain stock of spare parts and also to have your product designed in such a way that if you use portable batteries, that these portable batteries can easily be replaced. Besides that, from 18th August 2026, we will have mandatory labeling of the capacity on the average minimum operating time on these batteries. We will have, as for all battery category specific regulations for the collection of waste batteries. We also see, and you know this from the EU Batteries Directive, certain quotas the legislator would like to reach as regards batteries given back once they have been bought. And in this context also is the examination obligation of the European Commission to examine until 31st December 2030 whether a deposit system for batteries shall be established within the European Union. Everybody who is in Germany knows deposit systems from the supermarket as regards bottles. You will have to leave a certain deposit at the supermarket if you would like to buy a bottle, and then once you return the bottle, you will also get returned your deposit. This is a system which might be established for portable batteries as well. Enough on the portable batteries for now. Let's talk about the light means of transport batteries. These are batteries you typically know from your e-bike, from the e-scooter. Also here we have quite comprehensive obligations. We have performance and durability obligations. We have the obligation to include a battery management system from 18 August 2024. It has to inform the user about a state of health and expected lifetime, as well as capacity of these batteries. Furthermore, for LMT batteries, we need the declaration on the CO2 footprint. What does this mean? The carbon footprint of a battery means that we have to somehow calculate the greenhouse gas emissions and greenhouse gas removals in the product system, and have to display it or have to indicate it within the informational documents of the product. What is exactly meant with this is still, we hope for guidance of the European Union at this point, let's say so. We can have a look at the annexes of the battery regulation, but it's not really concrete as in this regard. As long as there is no real guidance of the European Union, we might also have the chance to let's say, interpret the law in a way that we are able to work with the law. Besides that, of course, we have also a certain minimum recycling content within these LMT batteries. We will have a remove and replaceability obligation here as well. And interestingly, as regards LMT batteries, products containing such batteries have to be designed in such way that professionals can easily replace these batteries up to 5 years after the end of production. So in opposite to the portable batteries, where end customers, end users, customer generally speaking, have to be able to replace the batteries, here it will be only professionals. But last but not least, for these battery category, we will also need a battery passport, which contains general and specific information on the batteries, general information such as what battery category is it, but specific information such as even exploded diagrams allowing you to dismantle, disassemble the battery. I will talk on the battery passport at a later stage in a little bit more detail. Let's go on to the starter, lightning, and ignition batteries. They are not that comprehensively addressed in the EU batteries regulation. We see that we have certain minimum requirements as regards the recycled content in the batteries, that we have, of course, labeling requirements and specific regulations on the collection of waste batteries. What we do not have is specific obligations on the CO2 footprint or specific requirements for safety, performance, and durability. On to the industrial batteries. This is, I personally think, a very interesting point. Industrial batteries will be more or less the largest group of batteries, nearly more or less all batteries which are not subject to any other batteries category will be subject most likely to the industrial battery category. We have comprehensive requirements on these industrial batteries, like the declaration on the CO2 footprint I've already mentioned. We have also a minimum requirement in regard to recycled content, performance and durability requirements, and of course specific regulations for the collection of waste batteries. And we will need to file a battery passport. Now with the industrial batteries, we are at the second subcategory of batteries we see within the EU batteries regulation, namely the so-called stationary energy storage systems. So what are these? Stationary battery energy storage systems are industrial batteries which are designed to store from and deliver electric energy to the grid. In short, this is it. So what does this mean? emphasis was on the end here. So it's the stationary energy storage system stores energy from the grid according to the definition, and then later gives it back to the grid. I'm not really sure whether this was really the intention of the legislator here to say it needs to do both. Why is that so? If we are really serious about the climate change, about addressing climate change and about shifting to renewable energies, we will need many of these stationary energy storage systems near to solar panels, near to wind turbines. That storage systems which store energy directly produced by these plants should not fall under the scheme of the stationary energy storage systems. I'm not really sure whether this was the intention of the legislator. Let's wait for guidance of the European Union here. At least from the recitals, we can already see that the European Commission was aware that these large and important group of batteries, these stationary energy storage systems, are until today not governed by any by battery law, let's say by safety requirements, which is not really true, because these large energy storage systems will be most likely subject to the low voltage directive and to the ANC and to the RED, you name it. But I think it is the clear intention of the European legislator to address also these batteries under the EU battery regulation. If we have a stationary energy storage system, we will also need the battery management system I've already talked a little bit about on which gives information on aging condition, lifespan, and capacity of these batteries. Last but not least, let's go to the electric vehicle batteries. They are also quite interesting due to the parallel stipulations in the automotive sector on batteries, which is evolving right now. What we see from the EU batteries regulation is that we will need to have a declaration on the CO2 footprint, that we will have certain minimum requirements on recycled content, and that we will have performance and durability requirements. We will also need to implement certain information obligations within the battery management system. We will have, of course, specific regulations for the collection of the used batteries, and we will see the battery passport, the digital file of the batteries. So what I will do now is jump over the slides I was just talking. Once again, you will receive them afterwards. And now let's go a little bit deeper into the automotive industry, which is a really interesting topic, as I think, and how will these several schemes work with each other and how are they interconnected? So basically the EU battery regulation itself says, yeah, we know there is the automotive law, let's say the type approval law, which many of us may know, the 2018-858 regulation. But nevertheless, we see that information requirements on batteries are not addressed enough. And furthermore, we also would like to have some, let's say, sustainability obligations from EU batteries regulation to be applicable also on electric vehicle batteries. So bottom line is you will need to fulfill requirements arising from automotive law and the EU batteries regulation at the same time. We will come back to the automotive industry in a few seconds when we will talk about the battery management system. I'm transferring to this last topic of today, and we will make a short focus on specific tasks. And here we go with the battery management system. Battery management system needs to be implemented for the LMT batteries, for the stationary battery energy storage systems, and as I just mentioned, for the electric vehicle batteries. Basically, it is about being every person who lawfully acquired the battery, so not only the person you sell the product to, but also any other person who legally acquired the battery is able to gain information on the health and expected lifetime of the batteries. And what is meant with that says Annex 7 of the EU battery regulation. We see that we have a strict, very tight deadline here on 18 February 2024. The first implementation stage of this is already applicable. Back to the automotive industry, I said, we will talk about this. It's interesting since the battery management system will have to display the state of certified energy in a electric vehicle battery. At the moment, this is in the General Technical Regulation 22, dated 19th April 2022, already stipulated what is meant with the state of certified energy. We see that this at the moment transformed or implemented into European law. We had on 8th November 2023, the European Parliament decided to refer this procedure to the committees, but nevertheless, it will become, especially the term state of certified energy, will become European law in the midterm. So basically, this is what everybody of you who works in the automotive industry will be quite aware of already, I guess, that we have here a certain state of energy will need to display within the battery management systems. Last but not least, what is important for all of us as regards the battery management system, it does not only allow information, but also access for, let's say, refurbisher and remanufacturer to reset the system once they refurbished the battery. Let's go to another focus topic. I would like to address the battery passport. Battery passport is applicable to LMT batteries, industrial batteries, and electric vehicle batteries. Industrial batteries, if they have a capacity greater than 2 kilowatt hours. This is interesting insofar as, of course, now that you're concerned about the EU batteries regulation at a very early stage and still have some time to implement or until it becomes applicable, you can consider what is about designing my product in such way that I do not have to fulfill the battery passport requirement, because within the battery passport requirement, I will talk about this in a few seconds, I have also many obligations to disclose certain informations. Yes, it is possible to design your industrial battery basically in such a way that you will be not addressed by the battery passport requirement. However, we see also within the recitals of the European battery regulation that the legislator saw the risk that someone might try to avoid this requirement by saying if you're able to simply assemble a battery, it will not be which has a capacity lower than 2 kilowatt hours, it will not be considered as a battery on its own, but it will rather be assessed on basis of the assembled product. So it's not that easy to avoid this requirement, but still there is some leeway for you to design your batteries in certain ways. The battery passport, what is it? The regulation itself says it is a digital file of the battery. It will be reachable via the QR code, which has to be printed on the battery itself. And it will be divided into 3 sections. We will have publicly accessible information, which is not that bad to have publicly accessible, as it will regard the battery category and let's say keyword traceability, a certain serial number of the battery. But the other 2 sections are quite interesting. We have information accessible to notified bodies, market surveillance authorities, and the European Commissions. And we will have information accessible to persons with legitimate interest in access and processing. So the second section might be not that bad, because you will have to disclose information towards persons which are necessarily your competitors. But the third section, of course, might be interesting, because you will have to disclose information, and this is what Article 77, paragraph 2 already says, towards persons like remanufacturers, second life operators, and recyclers. So basically, it is possible that competitors of you will gain information on certain parts of your battery that you might rather not see them to have access to. What information exactly is meant with that, and what the people in detail are, will be specified by the European Union until 18th August 2026. Already today, I can tell you, if you have a look into the annexes of the battery regulation, that, for example, the already mentioned exploded diagram, so more or less a guidance to reverse engineer, will be subject to these information. This is because the European Union, to go back to the beginning of our webinar today, wants to further the second life use of batteries. The deadline for the battery passport is the 18th February 2027, so there is still some time to go. I've already talked about the deadline of the battery passport. Let's have another 2 thoughts on the implementation of the battery passport. responsible for fulfilling the requirements arising from the battery passport is the party placing the battery on the market, so the manufacturer or importer. Other economic operators or other actors, let's say, will have to most likely verify whether the battery passport is drafted, and it's still under discussion, I think, whether we will have to check if it is, if they also have to review it. I tend to say rather not. Distributors have to verify whether the battery is properly marked according to the obligations Benedikt already was talking about, and whether the required documents accompany the respective battery. So the battery passport will be provided digitally, so we can discuss whether they really need to review the battery passport as well. Interestingly, online marketplaces. Online marketplaces are not really addressed by the EU batteries regulation, but are addressed by the new product safety regulation, which also came into force this year. And they see the big importance of online marketplaces within the European Union. And according to the product safety regulation, only compliant products shall be offered on an online marketplace. So it is at least thinkable that online marketplaces will have to foresee a certain window as regards batteries, where you can either put the QR code in and say, here is the link to my battery passport, or even make the battery passport available on the online marketplaces, which you might not want to have, because then again, another economic operator, which might also be your competitor, will have access to the battery passport. If you are subject to the battery passport requirement, you will have, and there is a person which is legally allowed to have access to, you will have to grant free access. So it's not easy to say, I will put something like a paywall or so between my battery and its battery passport. Okay. A last and really important and interesting topic is also the due diligence obligations arising under the EU batteries regulation. And this is something Benedikt will tell you more about.
Exactly, thank you. That's a completely new topic or hot topic, let's say, coming up in the past years, and well, it adds some special flavor, I would say, to this overall mantra which we have when talking about product compliance issues within distribution, within the supply chain, as there is this overall mantra saying no product compliance on the one side, no market access, or turned into positive word, only compliant products may enter and be sold on the European market according to the stricter regulations we have here. And this regulatory landscape which we have is rapidly evolving, as we see with batteries regulations, as we have seen with other regulations in the past few years. And now the new thing is that it is also expanding beyond this traditional product safety requirements to encompass also eco-design issues, and which we're talking about here shortly in the end, some supply chain issues, namely supply chain due diligence. Some of you may already know that, because as far as we're in Germany concerned, we have the Supply Chain Act, which has been enacted recently, 2-3 years ago, and it's, let's say, going sharper and sharper concerning and covering more companies with the time passing by, with fewer employees in the companies being needed in order to be applicable. And now it appears that this momentum of supply chain due diligence has also reached the EU level. We're talking here about, not today, about the Corporate Sustainability Due Diligence Directive. There is a draft around in the European Union which is discussed. And well, right now, as I understand, it is to be waited whether this will be really put into effect. It's still under discussion. But what we have here now already is a first glimpse into due diligence issues, because the batteries regulation also covers these things. And if you look it up, if you search for the word due diligence, it actually is apparently the next big thing in law, because we find 84 hits if we search for that term only in the batteries regulation. And as I said, the next big thing, it is also in the news, not in the news because of the batteries regulation, but maybe you've heard recently that there is this Bavarian car manufacturer who has just been on the news because of that, not related to the batteries regulation, but related to batteries and the sourcing of the raw products needed, the raw materials. In that case, it has been cobalt, which is needed for producing batteries for the e-fleet of that Bavarian car manufacturer. And they had signed a contract with a Moroccan supplier, a mining group, and there had been made quite some serious allegations about the supplier, about this mining group, that they were contaminating the environment with toxic arsenic, which could be found in the lakes nearby and the rivers. And so this shows already that the supply chain due diligence, and now related also to batteries, is not only something which is risky for health and environment and reputation, which is already bad enough, but, and that is the change here, it is also a risk for distribution itself. And why is that so? Well, that is so because if we talk about the batteries regulation, this is now new, that it is part of the conformity assessment. If we don't have a supply chain due diligence made up, there is an issue with the conformity of the product, and the products in the end must not be sold throughout the European Union. Who are the actors that are obliged to take care of this due diligence? Well, it's producers and importers especially, or operators who have their own manufacturing and operate the batteries here in the European Union, if they have a turnover of 40 million net or more. And these rules here apply in addition to what we have from other national rules, like conflict mineral or national, and in European rules, the European rules on the conflict minerals, for example, they continue to apply as well. Maybe perhaps to understand what kind of materials are covered, it's especially nickel and cobalt. It's also lithium, and it is the fourth one. So it's especially for raw materials where you have to take care of that they are sourced in an ecological, especially ecological, also human rights ensuring way. And these will start also these obligations from 2025, not 2024. And there is quite something to read in these articles about the 47 and following, about the obligations which are due. However, and there is again what Ulrich already said beforehand with regard to other parts of the regulation, there is still room for concretization, and there are guidelines to expect it within February 2025 from the EU Commission in order to better estimate what these actors have to do. But let's say very generally what they have to do is they have to set up a corporate strategy, how to deal with due diligence obligations under this regulation. They have to set up standards. They have to set up a management process in order to control the risk, in order to assess the risk, first of all, but also to control it, to mitigate if possible, and to monitor it. And they have to make sure that there is a supply chain transparency, so that you can tell, if asked, especially by authorities, that you can tell who are the suppliers, how the suppliers source the raw materials, in which countries of origin, at which quantities, and that you also have contractual obligations. So that means that you put into your contracts with the suppliers specific rules on maintaining not only the transparency, but the whole due diligence of the supply chain. And that all adds up to further rules on the batteries, which have to be observed from 2025 onwards. So, Ulrich, I think it's now still time for some questions, as we've reached lunchtime, noon.
Thank you very much for your attention so far. We will use the last, we have 1 minute remaining. It's like, yeah, definitely more on point than the German Deutsche Bahn, but whatever. Let's go to 1 or 2 questions at least. I will go to them through in the way they just reached us. There's one question: do the requirements of the regulation also apply to service parts, repair parts for batteries or battery systems like control modules or similar? So control modules. This is a really interesting question. Why? Because a control module itself will most likely be not a battery, right? But will be will be rather, let's say, a low voltage appliance, whatever. What I would say in this regard is that we have to determine it in the specific case. Basically, we would go as a first step and have an assessment whether it is considered a battery or not under this regulation. And I would rather tend at the moment, without having it assessed, I would tend to say no, it will not be really covered by this regulation. It is, if it is specifically such a control module or something like this, which does not have any energy storage. In this regard, there's also another question, and if I look on the clock, okay, I will speed it up. The question is whether Article 11 also applies to products where the battery has a longer lifespan than the product itself. And yes, I would say so. This is, let me think about it. Basically, you are free to. What you need to do is that you will design your product in such a way that it guarantees that the product is that the battery is replaceable. This is not the question whether the product has a short lifespan or not. Maybe there will, let's hope there will be some guidance as well, but from the law, I would say yes, we will have to design products in such a way that batteries are always replaceable. Maybe because for a battery defect or whatever, but of course I totally understand your question. You could say it's not sensefully here to do it like this, and this would be a good argument to say no, we will not have to design it in such a way. But often products are able to be used longer than they are intended first to be used, and this would be definitely an argument to say, okay, you will have to make it replaceable. Maybe it depends also a little bit on the product. If you have a product which is not safe to use after the end of its original lifespan because it has something like a maximum expiry date or so, then there's a chance for an exception, I would say, but not really in general speaking. Okay, so I would say we would close it with this. Benedikt, if you don't have to add anything else, please feel also free to ask any questions via email. You see our contact details here, and you will also receive the slides in the aftermath. It was our great pleasure to see you all here today. Thank you for attending, and have a nice day, everybody, and a nice holiday if you do not see each other before.
Thank you. Bye-bye.
Thank you. Bye-bye.